This is Stephen Tobolowsky, and you're listening to Fascination Street podcast. Bing! You win!
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with David Wood. He is the CEO of Focus.ceo, which is his business that focuses on life coaching and how to be an authentic leader. In this episode, we talk about what got David into that world and the things along his journey that made him realize that this was something he needed to do. He tells us a few stories that helped turn him into the man he is today. And then we talk a little bit about his first book, Getting Paid for Who You Are, which came out about 10 years ago. And we talk about his newest book. It came out in June. It's called Mouse in the Room. What does that mean, a mouse in the room? It's similar to that phrase, the elephant in the room, except a little bit different. We had such a good time. I'm positive that David is going to come back for round 2. I asked him about a very specific trend that's going on in employment right now and in the business world. He teased a little bit of the answer and then promised to come back in a few months to expound a little bit more and to dive more into being an authentic leader and helping us get laser focused on what it is that we want to be better in our lives. This is my conversation with David Wood.
Talk to me,
Welcome to Fascination Street podcast, David Wood. How you doing today, man?
I'm actually having a good time in this moment. I started off complaining. I was really bitching about the day, but don't tell anyone, but I'm actually having a good time.
Well, you turned it around. Good job.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, streetwalkers, if you will, this is David Wood, the CEO of Focus. Did I say that right?
The CEO of Focus.ceo.
Are you messing with me?
No, Focus.ceo is my company name and my domain name.
Oh, well, there you go. You heard him. So what we're going to do, David, is we're going to get to know you. We're going to talk about everything from where you were born and raised to what got you into doing what you're doing to what you're having for breakfast tomorrow.
All right. Well, now I'm hungry.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, David, you are a life coach and you teach business leaders how to be laser focused and to be an authentic leader. Did I kind of get that right?
Yeah, it's so tricky because I'm not specialized. I should, everyone's supposed to specialize, but because of my life experience, I started being good with numbers and business and systems and money. So it's natural for business owners to work with me, but I really care about the person. I care about what would have you have an awesome life, what would make your day be better. And there could be 150 different problems someone could be experiencing, and I get to bring 20 years of coaching experience to whatever that is. And I'm often saying something I've never said before in a session. So what do? I help people's life and business be better for business owners. One of the things that they often want is focus. They're so scattered. Okay, great. If that's what you need this week, we'll get into that. I just had a great coaching session before this call, and I apologize, by the way, for being a minute or two late. She was moving on 3 fronts at once, which was exciting to me. She's working on revenue because revenue dipped this month. So she's brainstorming some ideas to generate quick cash. She's also working on expressing herself in the world and producing video content because she's kind of scared of embarrassing herself. So I'm like, great, let's work on self-expression. And at the same time, she wants to know what's next for her over the next 5 years because the business needs a pivot. She's not really excited anymore. So those are 3 completely different things, and I like all of those topics. So long answer to your question, but kind of.
Well, I think that was a great answer. And so given that you don't have necessarily a specialization, you were able to help guide her in all 3 of those different aspects that she was looking for?
Yeah, and I think I have the street cred. A lot of people don't. They're either going to do business coaching or they'll do life coaching. But I'm 53 now, and the first half of my life was spent as a consulting actuary to Sony Music and Ford and Exxon. So I was on Park Avenue and I qualified as an actuary. If anyone knows what it is or looks it up, they should be suitably impressed. It was hard. It was horrendous qualifying. But once I did it, I got to enjoy working with big businesses. And then I realized when someone sent me to a personal growth course that I knew nothing about emotional vulnerability, intimacy, leadership, authenticity, integrity. I knew nothing about those things. I was fairly charming and personable, and because I was a consultant, I had a personality. Okay. But I was absolutely nowhere near qualified to help even myself with my own life. So I've spent the last 25 years sitting with gurus, going and being on retreat and doing things that would freak most human beings out to see what is it to be human and what am I afraid of and what would it take to call that bully from high school and say, I've hated you for 20-something years and I'm letting it go now. And I wonder if we could be friends. Like, what would that look like? So I think I now have the street cred to actually say, yeah, I can help your life be better. I may not know the specific thing you want to do. I've got one client wants to do an IPO. I said up front, I don't know how to do an IPO, but I'm a smart guy. I'll ask you the questions to help you get clear on what's next and maybe help you find the person that you need to consult you on that. And meanwhile, we'll handle the other things that you want to handle, like weight loss and how's your nutrition. I don't have to be an expert in nutrition, but we're like, what are you eating that's crap? And what are you going to do about it this week? Fortunately, I have done some stuff in nutrition in my own life. So I could say, all right, I know that you basically want to stop eating processed sugar. Go and buy a bunch of fruit. Eat fruit this week. Go nuts. So that's an example of where, I know a little bit about enough things that I can help someone in the right direction. And if they need an expert, like Facebook ads, I'll help them go and get an expert on Facebook ads.
Gotcha. You spent the first part of your life working on sort of your business acumen and kind of getting into that realm. And then the second part, kind of studying mindfulness, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. What is the operating system that we're in? How do we see it? And how do we hack it? That's always been fascinating to me. What is this awakening concept? What does spirituality mean? I kept being drawn towards teachers and people and sitting with them. And I think a simple explanation of it is, how do we hack the operating system? What's the programming we have that we don't even know about? Can we spot more of that? And then do we want to change any of it, release any of it, or are we happy with the program?
David, where were you born and raised? Where'd you grow up?
Cessnock, Australia, little country town north of Sydney, a couple of hours.
What made you want to be an actuary or get into that game?
I was really good at math. I came top of my school because mathematics is a system, right? I'm a nerd for systems. So I excelled in math. So I figured I should do something around math. And the default was, well, I'll be an accountant. So I didn't really know about anything else. It didn't seem very exciting. And then my mother was a teacher and she did some research and she found out there was a career called an actuary, which is not very well known. It was a lot harder to qualify to be an actuary than an accountant, and they got paid more generally. And so there was more prestige to it. And it's like, oh, well, seems like I should go for that. If that's harder and you get paid more, I should do it. And there were scholarships. Companies were paying people to go to university for 3 years and then hoping they would choose to work for them. It's called an unbonded scholarship. So I was like, well, I should get one of those. So I went and applied, and I was very fortunate. I think only one company said yes, because I was competing against all the other kids that came top of their school. And one company said yes, and it was the one I really wanted because it was a consulting company. And I liked the idea that I could be consulting to different companies and not just kind of in a cubicle all day within the one company. And it suited my personality more. So that's how I got started.
And did you end up going to work for that company?
I did. They were clever about it. You had to do like 4 weeks of an internship each semester as part of it, so you could build a relationship with them, get some work experience. It was really good. And so it was, as long as they didn't suck, of course, I'm going to work for them. Although when I got out of college, I said to them, look, I'd love to work with you. I just need to travel for a year. And it's a very big thing in Australia to go traveling for a year. I think it's because we're so far from everything. When you do fly, say, to the US, it's almost no extra cost to get a round the world ticket and stop in 10 countries. So these round the world tickets mean, well, I'll just take a year off and really go and do it. So I said, I think I need to do that. And they were very clever. The boss said, well, okay, fair enough. But what do you think about working for a year first, saving up some money for your trip, and then when you come back, you'll have a job waiting for you? I could not fault his logic. So I did that.
Did you say that the price difference between a ticket from Australia to America is not much different than an around the world ticket stopping at 10 countries?
Yeah, that's how it was back then. Let's say it was $2,000 to go to the US. It might be $3,000 for a round the world ticket. You had a year and you get, say, 10 stops. And it's like, well, that's what we're going to do.
That's amazing. What countries did you go to?
The US is where I did the bulk of the time. I had 8 months in the US, did a summer camp as a camp counselor for a while. Then I flew and did Europe. I got a boat over to Greece. And I think from Greece, I did Eastern Europe a little bit. I did Europe. And then from Greece, I went to India. I did India, Nepal, and then I went home.
Wow. What was your favorite? I mean, I'm going to go with America since you stayed here for 8 months, but what was your favorite?
And because I live here now, right?
Yeah.
I love the US. I would say my favorite places within the US were Boulder, Colorado, which I just moved from. I just spent 4 years living in Boulder, and Santa Cruz. And also the summer camp I had was one of the highlights of my life. I spent 3 months at a family camp, and I got to be with some amazing, fun people, and every day was different. I got to be on the tennis court one day, and then I got to help with the guy taking hikes another day, and then I'd get to MC the water ski show, and then I'd be doing limbo at night. It was just so much fun, and I realized looking back, the thing that made it the highlight of my life was I had community. I had people around me all the time, and there's always something good and always people around. And I tend to isolate a lot in life, but that showed me that community is a high value that I have.
Interesting. So what state was this summer camp in?
It was in California, where I now live, and it was by Kings Canyon near Fresno in California.
We're going to probably jump around just a little bit. So after you did your world travel and you settled, I guess, on America, and you were an actuary for a while and you worked with a bunch of different big businesses, what was missing, or what made you think, you know what I need to do is go hang out with a bunch of gurus and work on mindfulness? What about the first half of your life sort of inspired the second half?
I wasn't happy. I didn't really know that. I went to the doctor and said I had this pain in my belly, and he said, sounds like stress. And I said, no, it's not stress. I have a pain in my belly. He was right. I had stress, and my marriage wasn't going well. And I think it wasn't going well because my wife wasn't happy. I wasn't putting enough attention on her. I didn't know all this at the time. And I was complaining about my marriage, and someone said, oh, I think she should do this course. She sounds very irresponsible, and she should do this course called the Landmark Forum. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. Let's fix her. But the more this friend of mine talked about the Landmark Forum, the more I thought, I think I could use something like this. I'd had a taste of personal growth when I was 17. I did the Rotary Youth Leadership Award. It's known as RYLA. And I just, by some fluke, I got this thing and I got to go for a week, and I had community. And I got to feel the beginnings of my heart opening, because I shut down my emotions when I was a kid due to a tragedy when I was 7 years old. And so I'm like, I think I need to go and do this. And I went along to the intro night, and they really turned me off because they all smiled way too much. They all wore name tags, and they were very pushy about me signing up. I'm like, no, screw you. You can't tell me what to do. I went home and I signed up online because no one can tell me what to do. But I signed up and I went and did this course. And thank God they were ready for someone as arrogant and as tunnel vision and as intelligent as I was. They didn't blow me away those first 3 days, but they said, when you go back to work, people will ask you if you've had a haircut because something will be different about you and they won't know what. And it is true. It happened. First day back at work, someone said, have you had a haircut? I'm like, all right. And then I stuck around because they had a 10-week seminar series and it was free. And I'm like, all right, I'll do a little bit, but that's all. I do like 2 or 3 and then I'll drop out. Well, I found myself volunteering to be a leader, a group leader on the first night. And then I was like, oh, shit, now I have to show up to all 10 of these things because now I'm a leader. So I did all 10 of these things, and then I saw people coming back. The point of this was I wasn't like, I'm going to jump and do self-help for several years. It was like, I'm going to get in and get out. But I did one thing, and that led me to the next thing. And then I saw people were so lit up from doing the next thing. So I said, all right, I'll do the next thing and then I'll stop. But that next thing cracked my heart open. I was crying, weeping, standing up in front of everybody saying, you all want to cure world hunger and have world peace and do all this. I don't want any of that bullshit. And I'm crying. And the leader said, well, where'd you get that from? How do you know? And I realized I got that from my past. And the whole course was about leaving the past in the past. And I was like, oh, maybe I do want to do something of service. Now here we are, 25 years in the future, and my life has been devoted to helping people's lives be better. But I had this story that I didn't want any of that. They cracked my heart open. So I did go and do the third program, which was called the Self-Expression and Leadership Program. And little did I know they were training me to be a leader. I know it was there in the title, but 20 years later, I was like, do I know anything about leadership? Seems that I do. So that's what got me into this. And then that started the ball rolling, those first 3 courses. And I think I was now ready to actually learn and listen. And I had enough humility. And so someone would invite me to go and sit with a teacher, and I'd sit and I'd be like, oh my God. And the teacher said to me, you've been waiting for this your whole life, this level of truth. You've been looking for this your entire life. And he was right. I've never stopped looking for deeper and deeper levels of truth and helping other people access it.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
So I ran into previous guest of the show, Chris Gronkowski, the other day, and it went a little something like this.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Chris. Hey, you know what sucks? When I get done with my workout at the gym, my protein shake's not cold anymore, man. It's room temperature.
Weird. I haven't run into you at the gym lately.
Busted. Okay, truth be told, I don't work out, but I do get thirsty after a long day of podcasting. I just can't seem to keep my cocktails cold.
You should use an ice shaker.
What's an ice shaker?
The ice shaker is a double-wall, vacuum-insulated stainless steel shaker bottle with a patented twist and agitator that breaks up the protein powders.
So you're saying I should switch to an ice shaker, take out the agitator so I can fit more ice in the cup and it'll stay cold longer?
Steve, you don't need more ice. The ice shaker is third-party tested and verified to keep your drink cold for 30-plus hours.
Chris, you're a genius. I'll still remove the patented screw and agitator and just add more booze.
I guess technically you could, but if you actually use the ice shaker as a protein drink cup, the agitator breaks up the powder and doesn't bounce around like you're shaking a paint can.
Why are we still talking? Let's party.
Gronk style!
That's right, Streetwalkers. Ice Shaker is made from kitchen-grade stainless steel so it doesn't smell all funky after you use it a couple of times like those cheap plastic ones. When I'm out and about doing interviews or partying Gronk style, I use the Fascination Street Podcast Edition 26-ounce Flex Ice Shaker cup, and it keeps my drink cold until the sun comes up. You saw Ice Shaker on Shark Tank. All 5 sharks made an offer with Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez closing the deal. Now you can get a deal too. Order your own 26-ounce Flex Cup right now at iceshaker.com and use the promo code FSP for $5 off your first order. Once again, that's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Pod, for $5 off your first order. That's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP.
Let's get back into it.
Earlier, you said that as a child, you shut down your emotions, so to speak, due to a tragedy that happened when you were very young. Without going into any detail, do you mind sharing what sort of tragedy?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing it. My little sister was killed by the school bus when we came home from school one day, and I witnessed it. So I didn't know, like none of us knew at the time that, hey, this is going to have an impact. You're going to have some shit to deal with out of this. I didn't know that. I just grew up very left brain, very logical, and that might be the silver lining, that I got really good, really cerebral. But then I discovered when I was 23 and I kept on breaking up with this woman, my first girlfriend. Her name is Leanne. I kept breaking up with her. The 8th time that I wanted to get back with her, I realized I couldn't do it without like a doctor's note or something. Like, what the hell is going on? Her friends hated me. Her family hated me, as they should. And I finally went to a psychiatrist. And I said, what the hell is going on? He said, I think that you are a sensitive guy. I think you've shut down your emotions. It sounds like you've had a complicated grief reaction. You never grieved properly. I think I can help you reclaim your emotions. That session with him was probably the biggest natural high of my entire life, when I walked out from there and realized there was a solution. There was an answer to what was going on. Maybe even one day I could get back with Leanne. And he worked with me on this hypothesis. He helped me begin the emotional work that I'd never, ever had access to. And a few months later, I went back to Leanne. I told her what was happening. I asked her if she would come to the psychiatrist with me so he could explain what was going on. And she said yes. She was dating this guy at the time, so she wasn't available. A few months after that, she did break up with him and became my girlfriend. And then I got this job transfer opportunity to transfer to Park Avenue, New York. And I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it unless you come with me. And she said, look, I promise we'll work it out. Go. I promise we'll work it out. She ended up following me to New York. And a year later, we were married. So there was a happy ending to that story. And she's the wife I talked about when I said things weren't going well. But that's the origin story of that relationship. And we ended up getting divorced. And I now like to say that I'm happily divorced to a wonderful woman. She just texted me to say that her and her family might be close to Los Angeles. We're going to see if we can meet up. I stayed and visited 2 years ago, and her child calls me Uncle David. So I'm very proud of that. And I will say, without all of the work that I have done with the therapist and then with teachers and gurus and then countless therapists since then, without all of that work, I doubt I'd be able to say I'm happily divorced to a wonderful woman. I have a wonderful relationship with her. I don't consider the marriage a failure. I consider we maybe held on a bit too long was the failure. I'm proud of that.
That's fantastic. I love when people are able to, make that break and then still be friends. I love that. I think that's good for everybody's soul. David, you wrote a book called Get Paid for Who You Are. What is that about? What does that mean?
You know what? We could talk about Get Paid for Who You Are, and I'll give you the short version. But I'm much more excited to talk about the book that came out in June, if you're open to it.
I am, but first give me the short version of Get Paid for Who You Are.
Yeah. Get Paid for Who You Are, I did about 10 years ago. It was my first book. Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup was kind enough to write the foreword to it, which was incredible. First-time author, and he's willing to loan his credibility to me. And it was because people kept asking me, how do you travel the world and live wherever you want and work whatever hours you want? And you seem to make money while you're sleeping. Like, I don't understand. How do you do this? And so that seemed to be what people were wanting, to know how to do it. And then Tim Ferriss had just come out with a 4-hour work week. And I was annoyed and jealous because, I could have written that book. And my girlfriend at the time said, this is the book people want, write this book. So I wrote Get Paid for Who You Are, which was about taking something you care about, that you love, and creating an automated business with it, taking it online and setting it up. So you got a newsletter, you're sharing content, and then you might have a service like coaching or consulting or astrology or whatever. Maybe you create a product and then you automate it. So you're serving the world. And then you get the 4 freedoms. I'll see if I remember the 4 freedoms now. Time freedom to work when you want. Geographic freedom to live and work wherever you want. Emotional freedom, which is the inner work that we do to actually be happy in our life. And then financial freedom, have the money to do what you want to do. Those 4 freedoms are available. And I guess I now help my clients with those 4 freedoms. Depends what they need. We've got to work on the finances. Let's do that this week. You'll work on the emotional side. Your kid's not talking to you, or you're really, really upset because your ex-husband is being abusive and you don't know how to set a boundary. Okay, let's deal with that. So there's the nutshell of Get Paid for Who You Are.
Okay, now tell me about this book. Is it Mouse in the Room? Is that the book that came out in June?
Mm-hmm.
First, tell me, what the heck does that mean? What is the mouse in the room?
When I said that, Guru said to me, you've been looking for this level of truth your entire life. He was right. Mouse in the room is to show the pathway so that everyone else can access that level of truth. It's called Mouse in the Room because one day someone came into a workshop I was teaching and said, you've got to name the thing. You've just got to name the thing. And we all looked at her and we waited. And she said, you got to name the thing. Like, say more. Use your words. She's like, whatever's there in the room, that thing between you, that thing that's going on with you that hasn't been said, you've just got to name it. You may not have to fix it. You may not have to do anything about it, but you've got to name it so you can move on. And I said to her, that's so true. That's so powerful. You should write a book on that. Name that thing. A year later, I kept talking about this in podcasts. And I thought, what have we got closest to that in our language where you have to address what's going on? You have to name it. And I thought the elephant in the room. You've got to address the elephant in the room. But then I realized this is much more subtle. The elephant in the room, you see it, I see it, no one's saying anything. If I showed up without a shirt on, that's an elephant in the room. And yeah, I could have called the book Address the Elephant in the Room. But I want people to look for those much more subtle things. Maybe it's something going on with me that you have no idea about. Or I think you have an idea about it, but I'm not even sure. These creatures are much more subtle than an elephant, so I call them mice. It might be hard to notice. As an example, I named a mouse before we hit record. You said, how are you doing? And I actually checked in. And I said, I'm actually having a good time. I started the day complaining. But despite myself, I'm actually enjoying myself. I told my client that I'm feeling more tired than I want to be, and I'm complaining about it. And I'm still having a good time. That's a mouse that can be named. Maybe the person might know about it and you don't know. So, for example, this is embarrassing. There's a scene I want to do with someone in my acting class, and she doesn't want to do a 15-minute scene. She wants to do a shorter scene, which is very smart because it's less work. And I said, well, why don't we do the second half of the scene because it's more active and more engaging? And she said, no, she'd rather do the first half. I'm thinking maybe it's because there's a kiss in the second half of the scene. I don't know if this is true, but this is now a storytelling mouse that I have in my mind. Is that the reason that she didn't want to do it? So if I want to get reality on that, I could ask her. I say, was that the reason? Because of the kiss, or was there another reason? I could actually address it. I may not, because this is a mouse that doesn't need to be addressed. I'm happy to do the first half of the scene. I said, you want to do the first half? We'll do that. But that's an example of a mouse that I have that might have nothing to do with the other person. She might just be like, no, I actually just like the first half. It could be a completely different thing. If it was really bothering me, I could actually artfully name that mouse and just get a reality check. I can't actually see any upside. If she says, yeah, I didn't want to do it because I don't want to do a kiss, it doesn't really get me any information. I'm probably going to go and find someone else who does want to do the second half of the scene because I think it'd be fun. I don't want to do it because there's a kiss. I want to do it because it ramps up. It gets much more active because he's trying to get her to run away with him before their spouses come back. And so it gets really fun and interesting. But I can do that with someone else. That's an example of a mouse. So it's called Mouse in the Room because the elephant is not alone.
This might sound like a bizarre question, but how many different kinds of mice are there?
Well, I think there are infinite, but in the book, I identify 8 different kinds of mice, and I'll give you 3. People have to get the book to find out the other types, but we've already talked about storytelling mice. This one's a big one because we're telling stories every second of every day, but we don't know it. We're living in our own matrix. If you've seen The Matrix, we're living in a matrix. We don't know we're in the matrix. We just think this is reality. We think that person's a jerk. We think, oh, that person doesn't like us. We think that person, doesn't think I'm good enough for the job. We just have all of these stories, and that's our reality. So as you read the book, my hope is that you'll realize, oh, I got a storytelling mice about my partner. I think my partner's not going to be interested in that. Or I think so-and-so is upset with me and feels disappointed that we didn't go to dinner last week. Or I'm thinking blah, 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 blah. It's countless. Once you realize it, you can check in. Hey, I got a storytelling mouse on my hands. I'm making up this story and I don't know if it's true or not. Can I check in with you and get some reality on it? or person will probably say, yeah, okay, I got this idea. You might be annoyed that we didn't blah, 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 blah. Is that true? And you find out.
I'm going to pause you. So I know this young woman who recently broke up with her boyfriend that she had been seeing for nearly 2 years. And when we asked her why she broke up with him, she said, because I didn't want to hear about his day every day when I came home. I didn't want to hear about his boring day. And so would that be an example of maybe where the storytelling mouse could have been addressed?
That one's not a storytelling mouse. That one would be a toleration mouse. The storytelling mouse is when we're making up a story in our mind and we don't know if it's true or not.
Okay.
We assume it's true. We assume everything's true. That's the problem. But this woman had a toleration mouse. Something was happening that she didn't want to have happen. And it seems like maybe she didn't speak up for a long time. So this is a good example because then the resentment builds. It's like, oh my God, again, with the boring details, I'm just not interested. So what she could have done is identified, oh, I got a toleration mouse in my hand, and then find a way to artfully name that mouse. And there's a process in the book called the 3D process, which will help you discover your mice. Okay, I don't want this. What do you want? And that would be the third type of mouse I'd mentioned, a desire mouse. What I want might be to hear something about his day that mattered to him, something where he felt something that he's really proud of or was really upsetting, like something that had some emotional charge to it versus just all the detail. I don't want the details. I have a desire for this. I have a desire to connect. So maybe I do want to hear about the day, but maybe it's like 3 minutes hearing about the details and then something that matters, something you felt. And then I might like to be asked about my day. And I get 3 minutes. Boom. Blah, 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 blah. Details. Story might be boring. And then something that mattered to me in the day. That's an example. And then you go in and you disarm the person and set them up for the conversation so that it's not just like, hey, I don't want to hear your boring story. We're not going to start with that. We're going to start with consent. We're going to say, hey, here's why I want to have a conversation because I want to connect with you more. We share positive intent. It's all in the book, 3D process. And now you've got 3 different types of mice out of the 8: storytelling mice, toleration mice, and desire mice.
What do you hope the reader gains out of reading this book? The end of the book, what do you want the reader to have changed or have learned?
A deeper level of truth in their life, in every area, with their boss, with their co-workers, with the person at the checkout counter, with their kids, with their partner, with their friends. I want them to have access to a deeper level of truth. This is who I am. These are my desires. This is what I want. And as we do that, we also give other people subconscious permission to share more of their truth.
Why is that important to you?
Probably because I didn't have it as a kid. My parents didn't say, hey, David, what are you feeling right now? What's going on for you? Say more about that. You're angry? Oh, let's hear about that. Oh, that makes total sense. You'd be angry. Do you want to beat a pillow? Most of us didn't have that. So we've learned to squash ourselves down. And it's no wonder that we medicate with medication, with alcohol, with marijuana, with sugar, with TV, with sex, with whatever. If we can access more of ourselves, more truth, we can actually have what I think we're all craving. And I'm one of them. I'll put my hand up. We crave more connection. We're so isolated, surrounded by people. I'm going to do a scene for acting class in October. It's a song from Monty Python's Broadway musical Spamalot, I'm All Alone. And he sings this song, how he's all alone, surrounded by people. It's like that for most of us. We want more connection. It's available. The magic of movies is available in our day-to-day lives. We just need a roadmap, and Mouse in the Room is a roadmap for that.
So that goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning, that the part that was missing in your life was community.
Yes, and still is. I've got amazing friends, and I just left Boulder, Colorado in May and moved out to Hollywood to really dive into acting. And so now I'm consciously creating community with my acting class. We're going for drinks on Thursday night. I've found a dance community. I'm going to that once a week. I've got some other friends in a community here And I'm actively reaching out from time to time to connect with some of those people. So I'm creating community. Yeah, I'm a coach. I've been a coach for a long time. When I see a goal, something I want, the question is, what am I doing about it? What's the structure I'm setting up so that I have that by default in my life? Oh, I've also created this huge project to reach out to 200 leaders in Hollywood, directors, producers, casting directors, agents, have them on my podcast. That's part of building community in this new industry that I care about. So doing a lot to build community because that's what this body needs.
Makes sense. I have one more thing I want to talk about before we head out. There is a new, I don't know if you want to call it a phenomenon, a trend, a word salad, but there's a new thing called quiet quitting. Are you familiar with this phrase?
Quiet quitting?
Uh-huh.
No.
Okay, so quiet quitting is this recent thing that I guess businesses and certain radio stations are talking about, where let's say you are an employee and you are scheduled to work 40 hours a week, but there's things that you do that sort of go a little bit above and or beyond your regular day-to-day thing. You'll answer emails outside of that 40 hours, or you'll be thinking about how to solve whatever problem outside of those 40 hours. Whatever, you'll water the plants on your way out of work or just whatever. All these little things that are not necessarily inside your defined 40-hour work week, but they're a part of your job in your own mind. You know, like you do this because, I don't know, you want the plants to look better at work, so you water them, you feed them, or you want to solve that problem, so you kind of work on it outside of your 40 hours. But what is trending in the workplace is that people are not doing that anymore. They're kind of only doing their 40 hours, only doing what their specific job description is, and they're not doing any of these sort of add-on things that I guess some employers had kind of gotten used to or might have not even known were happening. And so the trend is that people aren't doing that anymore. They're only doing their job description in their 40 hours, and that trend is called quiet quitting. Do you have any thoughts about that coming from all of the different aspects that you are familiar with and have studied in?
I do, but this is going to be a tease. That's a huge topic. I don't have a fortune cookie answer. I work with managers, business owners all the time on how to empower their staff to be leaders. It's this idea that they want everyone to be a leader now. So people are thinking about, how do I generate? How do I be a cause? You don't just hand them a list of tasks. So it's a big topic. I'd be happy to come back on your show another time and talk about how to have everyone be a leader. In fact, the new subtitle of the book, I'm going to publish it on Barnes & Noble now, and the new subtitle, it'll be Mouse in the Room, How to Lead Yourself and Others. So I'll be happy to talk about that another time.
Gotcha. That sounds fantastic. We'll definitely have you come back on to expound more upon that. David, where can everybody find you on social media?
Social media, well, go to mouseintheroom.com. That's my website. You can get the book there. You can get the 3D process. It's a free download. So definitely get that for any edgy conversation you might want to have. You can also find all my social media links there for Facebook, Instagram. And if something resonated for you in this call and you're thinking, I think I need a coach, I need a high performance coach. I'm successful in lots of areas of life. And there are a couple where I want to be better and faster. Click on coaching in the menu at mouseintheroom.com and request a session with me. And we'll see if we're a fit and if coaching could really make an impact on your life. mouseintheroom.com.
Fantastic. David, before I let you go, is there anything we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about that you specifically wanted to talk about today? Did I miss anything?
Nothing comes to mind. I had a blast. I really enjoyed your questions, and going in, you got me animated, which is always a win, just to feel the passion of life. And in particular, I want to call out something you've had me realize, and I might even end up putting it in the book, was that teacher saying to me, you've been looking for this level of truth your whole life. In fact, I will go and add that, because I'm going to do a little slight rewrite of the book, and I'll add that to the book on the next iteration. And that's because of you. It's your fault.
Well, you're welcome, everybody who buys the book after he adds that little bit. David Wood, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street. I really appreciate it.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for the great questions.
I had a blast, and you go name those mice. Have a good day, man.
Oh, you too, man. I really enjoyed this. Thanks for boosting my day. That was awesome. All right. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Dave. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.